Are you going to give the instructions in English?
Sorry.
To all those persons who need who needs interpretation, you can go ahead and down at the bottom of your screen, select the globe option, the globe icon. And once you select it, it's going to give you two options, English and Spanish. You select the language desired, the original audio, and that way you can go ahead and enjoy of the interpretation. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Since our January meeting was canceled, this is the first meeting of the year. So I guess I can, our new East County planning person that will be representing. And we have Jose Marquez from Caltrans with us today as well. So welcome aboard. With that, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we have called home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, Degeno, the Sueño, the Capueño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, and protected and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. With that, can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Francesca, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum with the Airport Authority, the City of San Diego absent today.
Okay, thanks. With that, we'll start moving on to the regular agenda. I did want to announce that for planning purposes, as people look, that we are going to take item 7 before item 6. And so that order will be changed. Also, for speaking purposes today, I've asked for public speakers to be given 2 minutes to speak on the items. And please do your best to make sure you're speaking to the item that is listed on the agenda as relevant. With that, Francesca, do we have any non-agenda public member speakers?
Thank you. We do. We'll start with Purita Javier and then go to Cesar Javier.
Good morning. I am Purita Javier, senior with existing medical condition and victim of ceramics manufacturing and kiln toxicity. We join you to share lesson as community advocacy volunteers of District 9, City of San Diego. District 9 has common boundary with National City, with Council Rivera as elected leadership. We live in fear from ceramic kiln to X-City since 1997. For me, my doctor declared that anxiety has contributed to increased forgetfulness and elevated blood pressure compounded by moderate late onset Alzheimer's dementia. County Health and Human Services has involved in ensuring my health and safety. Thank you, Uncle Sam. We ask help from the City of San Diego since June 2021, starting with the police, fire, hazmat, code enforcement, city attorney, council members, and the mayor. No response since in meetings.
Thank you very
They
much. Your time is
record.
expired. Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, followed by Leif Genzer online.
Cesar Javier and family, we live in fear. We were hurt. This is an update from the frontline urban San Diego. Yesterday, I had to evacuate Purita at 9:30 a.m. for shortness of breath, cough, exposure to pollution, blood pressure elevation. A day before that, while attending our second session at the Port Authority Academy on environmental justice education, our fellow participants noticed Purita having cough and difficulty breathing. I told them our story of next door ceramic skin toxicity. They advised us to have Purita check up for possible pneumonia, although we have been seeking help from our respective hospital on respiratory lung issue. They took blood sample, EKG, X-ray at 4 p.m. She's declared negative of pneumonia. But the doctor emphasized, watch out for this toxicity, that is exposure to inhalation, exposure to possible ingestion. But the doctor, like her family, hinted environmental issue, air quality pollution. True, because the owner, a member of the San Diego Pottery Guild, continued working in his business in a hide and seek, with the chimney of the fireplace as a cover-up. We too inhale the toxic gases from burning wood. APCD has declared that burning wood is no, no, no. But still, the city allowed it. Our case is elevated now to environmental justice. Aside from air pollution, environmental impact to our plants, and even
Thank you very much. Your time is
the
expired.
bee.
We have 3 additional public speakers. We'll start with Leif Genzer and then go to Blair Beekman.
Good morning, SANDAG. My name is Leif Genzer. I'm the Vice President of RIDESD, a local public transport advocacy group. First of all, we find it pretty disappointing that the City of San Diego is absent from this meeting. I think the City of San Diego should play a major role in transportation, specifically active transportation. And then next, I want to make it clear that we want to advocate for a perfect implementation of the San Diego Regional Plan 2025, meaning not just hiding behind buzzwords like next-gen rapid transit or next-gen, and implement proper BRT on all of the proposed rapid lines. Also, don't shy away from densification. Densification will need to go hand in hand with better public transport. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Cameron Cage, followed by Blair Beekman. Cameron, you can go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm calling in to express my support for a fully built Purple Line as soon as possible. San Diego has a traffic crisis, and globally we're facing a climate emergency. We can't just keep wasting taxpayer money expanding freeways. We need reliable and fast public transit. We can't wait around till 2050 to get this thing built. And so I just want to say my priorities are building the Purple Line as fast as possible. It has to be going from San Ysidro to Sereno Valley to have its true impact. And ideally, it needs to be heavy rail so that we can actually get people the places they want to go in a fast amount of time. So I just urge the board to prioritize people over cars and build the Purple Line, and also expand the rapid transit bus lines that Leif was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. I'm still in Hawaii. I'll be here till the end of the month, and thanks for the meeting today. You'll be having an item on double tracking issues. I've gotten important lessons on that you actually almost be completing the entire length of the double tracking issues in double tracking form. So good luck in those efforts. I hope there can be environmental good practices for that double tracking issue still, as much as I can still offer restraint as much as possible. Good luck on those efforts in double tracking issues. I wanted to also comment that the Department Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem was in San Diego last week. I hope when she was there last Thursday, it was a time that people from SANDAG really got together and talked to her in unison, could be in unity to address concerns of San Diego County issues on immigration and what to do about border issues. I've made it clear here that I think that as we have to be addressing, criminal element and the importance of removing the criminal element from our putting them as a part of the immigration package of how to deport. That's first and foremost. In doing that, that possibly takes some law enforcement skill. But from that, we really should be practicing demilitarization and de-escalation. And I've been trying to make that clear. I hope you guys have been making that clear to her. And those conversations have been really important and have been happening. And how we have direct communication with the federal level on these issues, how we develop ARGIS to be a more comprehensive, very specific goal to not harm people, residents who live here. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Mario, is there an agency update?
Yes, sir. First of all, welcome to all. And wanna just mention, as I mentioned at the board meeting, the great news that our regional plan has been approved, both by the state and the federal government. The board approved the plan in December. The federal government approved it in January, and in February, the state government. The last time that the state Air Resources Board approved that, it took probably 9 months or more to get it approved. So we kind of broke a record time there. So we're very happy. Thank you to Antoinette and all her team, and thank you to all for your support and input on having a plan that was very inclusive. I took a trip to Sacramento and participated at the Mobility 20 Gun Sacramento advocacy trip. And we talked to legislators of transportation priorities as well as administration officials. Also participated at the CalCog meeting that they had, and had, like I said, with administration officials, meetings with the governor's office and CAUSTA regarding several of our priorities. Regarding SB 375 reform, Senator Capaldo did drop a bill. SB 1087 has been put in place, and it's talking about extending the sustainable community strategy periods from requirements to every 4 years to every 8 years. It has other items. Like any bill, it's a journey, and it keeps changing based on what is discussed on committees. So we'll wait and see where we are. We're bringing it to executive committee, if my memory serves me right, to request to see if we can support that bill. The finance team finalized the refinancing of bonds. It was $324 million of refinancing. We had 5 times more the takers or the people interested on it. That increased our savings to $61.5 million within a period of 22 years. So very happy. There was an upgrade on our some of our ratings from the rating agencies, and that really helped quite a bit, as well as the rating agencies mentioned the strategies the agency, the board, and the different working groups and subcommittees are putting in place are giving a lot of assurance to the market. We're very happy that we received $8 million for some projects from our congressional delegations. Those support projects for the San Isidro Transit Center improvement, the Sorrento to Miramar Phase 2 project, Rose Canyon Bridge replacement, and Buena Vista Lagoon enhancement. We appreciate the support from Senator Vargas, Schiff, Representative Peters, and Levin for their continuous support. I want to take a moment to congratulate Clarissa Falcon, Commissioner for the CTC. She has just been elected Chair to the CTC. To put it in perspective, SANDAG's funding probably is about 45%, give or take. Don't take it to the bank on this. 45%, 40 to 45% state funds, and the other 40 to 45% is federal funds. And then, of course, we have our local funds. And CTC is the agency that approves the majority of the state funds that come to SANDAG. So having a San Diego representative being the chair really helps them understand our needs and our perspective. So congratulations to Chair Falcon on this recently election. We also presented and submitted projects for our 2026 STIP. The CTC pre-meeting for STIP and SHOP was here in this room, and we were able to present our STIP proposal also to the CTC. They will be hearing our proposal and taking a vote in March for this. Project updates, our Vision Zero Task Force had a focus meeting on e-bike safety. Our California Border Resiliency Plan continues, and we're conducting a survey on this. It would end in February, the survey. On Border to Bayshore Bikeway, crews are planning to repave 13th Street. We really appreciate the community in Imperial Beach and South San Diego for all the support and the patience during this project. We're getting very close to finalizing it, so thank you for all the patience on this. And we will have an absolute work window on the Lawson Rail Line this weekend to do work on the Del Mar Bluff stabilizations and the Patiquitos Lagoon. Also, I want to mention that our reception office has moved to the reception of this first floor. So anybody visiting the SANDAG office will come into this reception here at the first floor, check in, and then they will be taken to the appropriate floor where their meeting is going to be. That concludes my report, sir.
Thank you. Do any committee members have anything they wish to discuss non-agenda item or report out on? Seeing nobody, we are going to then move on to consent. I will note that with consent there, we have received some public input on item 3.2. And so as part of just the representation of this, I think Mario had some comments.
The project that is being put in question, it seems that there is some concern that or appearance that we're expediting the project. So I do want to, including STIP dollars, match the other color of money. The CTC did not have enough cash flow and put our request until 2029. That would put in jeopardy the other grants and basically make us lose the full funding of the project. So there's a program called the 3090 that is the one that we're invoking, where we can use Transnet funds right now, use them in lieu of the STIP funds, be able to use timely funds, the other timely used in a timely manner without expiring the other colors of money. And then in 2029, when the STIP funds come in, the Transnet gets reimbursed. That's the only thing that we're doing. This is a financial strategy so the region will not lose other colors of money and will fail on this project, that it's a safety project.
Thank you, Mario. Can we now go to public speakers for consent?
Thank you, Chair. If you're online and would like to speak on the consent agenda, please raise your hand now. I will start with Cesar Javier. Step up to the podium.
Javier family. 3.1 was robust and meaty. but wishing a hint of collective continued solution action on Tijuana River pollution. 3.2. This is a city project, San Dieguito, if I remember right. We suggest more discussion on this. EIR, funding and performance. Why? We need to support the victims of survivors, Tijuana River pollution. 3.3, the scope is not clear to us. I'm sorry, we're only small politically. Funding may be used for various transit planning, programming. We are trying to grip with what we call public trust. We need discussion on this. Anything about money. We are taxpayers. And we need accuracy on this. Thank you. We believe that this is a collective intellectual coliseum, if I may say, like our good friend there, Honorable Anderson. We need money to project into the minds of people that it's time to celebrate the 250th independence.
Thank you. Your time has expired. We have two speakers online. We'll start with Shirley Weiss and then go to Leif Gansert.
Yes, good morning. My name is Shirley Weiss, and I'm a longtime resident of Del Mar and also constituent of SANDAG and NCTD. The primary concern of the host communities with respect to the rail realignment is that the proposal of the Coalition for Safer Trains, which we've called the Northern Yellow Line, it appears as the purple line on your boring, has equal consideration to all of the other routes. It is the only route that avoids eminent domain, business interruption, and so many of the environmental damage. We are concerned that premature building of the bridge, which we don't oppose. We don't oppose the bridge. We don't oppose the platform. We don't oppose Solana Beach double tracking. We're concerned with the timing. We want to make sure that our proposal is given an equal playing field. And we're concerned that if you build a bridge, that you're going to turn to our proposal and say, well, we built a bridge and you know what? It's inconsistent with your proposal. And so we're going to turn it down. We're very concerned about that. Now, I know this is a safety issue, but there are thousands, literally thousands of wood bridges all over the United States, over 100 years old, that are just being maintained in order to await, the completion of more important projects. That's really what should happen here. But I understand there's a lot of support, for building the event platform as soon as possible. We need assurances. We need assurances that our proposal will have an even playing field and that it will be implemented if it turns out it is the least environmentally damaging and economically damaging to the host communities. We can have both here. We can have a bridge, we can have an event platform, we can have a route that does not destroy Del Mar. Thank you very much.
I think our final speaker will be Leif Gansert. You can go ahead.
Morning, SANDAG. My name is Leif Gansert. I'm the Vice President of RIDE-SD. We in the past advocated for the Crest Canyon realignment of the Low Sand Corridor because we believe it is the fastest alignment that will provide the greatest value to citizens of all of San Diego County and even beyond the county. We urge you to approve this item number 3.2 to renew or rebuild the bridge so that this corridor is not in danger of facing more closures. We're going to have a closure this weekend outside of San Diego County, but the current blocks of Del Mar are very much at stake, so we want to have a new alignment as soon as possible, and that includes renewing or rebuilding this bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do I have any committee member comments? Mayor Sanchez.
I'm going to go ahead and move approval of the consent calendar.
Is, motion by Sanchez, second by Anderson. Is there any other final comment? Seeing none, please call for the vote.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, the Transportation Committee 2026 Work Plan. And I believe this is Robin and Brian.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So as the chair mentioned, this is your first meeting of the year, so we wanted to just take a few minutes to sort of level set, talk through what staff is thinking for the upcoming year for this committee in particular, and more importantly, get your feedback and thoughts on what you would like to be focused on. So we went through a governance refresh project last year. Some of you who are on other committees have already heard sort of this spiel, but just to make sure everyone has the same history. SANDAG, as you know, is defined in state law. And so as part of that, our governance structure, including our policy advisory committees, is outlined in state statute, as well as the membership of those policy advisory committees. What is not specifically defined in state law is what those committees are focused on. Transportation Committee is a little bit unique in that some of your responsibilities are actually enshrined. It has very specific duties for this committee. But outside of that, the board really has discretion in how it wants to form its governance structure to inform the decisions that are being made at the board level every other week. And so through this governance refresh project last year, we brought on an independent facilitator to talk to all of you, to talk to staff, and really take a look at how are our policy committees operating? Are you getting the value that you want out of those? And how can we improve them going forward? There were two sort of general takeaways out of all of that work, if I were to overly simplify that. And that was for the policy advisory committees, we want to focus more on policy. So less on sort of the routine business needs, but we really want to have those more substantive discussions that can help inform the board decisions. So we're not constantly sort of fleshing things out 3 different times, 3 different ways, and then having the conversation brand new once it gets to the board level. We really want to elevate the work of the policy committees to serve as advisors to the board. And then the second sort of general takeaway was for the working groups. For the working groups, we want to make sure that they're really getting that technical work done to then help inform staff as we are working with the policy committees and the board. And so as part of this work, we're actually having a conversation with the executive committee right now about transitioning many of our task forces into many of our working groups into technical task forces. That's a conversation that we started at our last executive committee meeting, and we'll be continuing at the next one in a couple of weeks. And so that would directly impact some of the working groups that currently report to this committee, like the mobility working group and others, and turn those into task forces. We've been coordinating with your city managers to talk to them about what would the membership of those task forces look like? What are some of the items that we really want them to be focusing on? So they're not just recurring meetings, meeting to meet, but rather what is the work that we need to get done for the agency? How can we better collaborate with your cities on that work and then bring the outcomes of that work to the committees and the board? So bringing it back to the Transportation Committee, there weren't a lot of changes that the board adopted in its amendments to Board Policy 1 for this committee. I think a couple of the responsibilities shifted to others. But other than that, we really wanted to be able to just focus the work and, like I said, elevate the discussion. So you'll see that as an example on today's agenda on grants. You don't have a lot of items on your agenda, but we want to make sure that you have the time and the space to really dig into our grants programs. There's been a lot of lessons learned over the last year on how we operate our grant programs. We're getting ready, hopefully, to release the Flexible Fleets grants program that you'll discuss today. And so we want this committee to really help inform where we're going when it comes to how we distribute funds to all of your cities and other partners throughout the region when it comes to grants. So that's just sort of a little bit of a teaser on sort of the direction that we're taking. And then Brian's going to talk through more specifics on what that means for the Transportation Committee.
All right, thanks, Robin. So the agency does have some responsibilities in your attachment to the board or the TC report, attachment 1, the redlined updated Board Policy 1 defines those responsibilities. I've put in this slide just a few of the ones that we definitely you'll see throughout the year, each year that you do have responsibilities to vote for, and then there's other ones that you have oversight and input. that you provide input to the board. The first one is the transit operators budgets for funding that comes every year. That'll be coming around June of this time. The second one is the TDA and SDA claim amendments and the RTIP and STIP amendments. That was just voted on in one of your items. Michelle has an item coming up next. Those often come a couple times a year. Another one is the regional short range transit plan and the coordinated human services plan. That was just brought to you last December. I think we had a really great, robust discussion on that. That'll come every 4 years, but you know, that's a big one of implementing the short range services out there for the MTS and NCTD, as well as and you're going to hear a couple items later today or in the grant programs update about 5310 and the programs for specialized transportation. That's a big one that this committee talks about each year. The comprehensive fare ordinance is another one of your responsibilities. It's delegated straight to the Transportation Committee. You'll have the approval to amend the fare ordinance. If you've already been hearing, MTS and NCD are talking about making some fare changes in the coming months. Next month, I'll bring an item to kind of talk about what they're up to. Their boards will be hearing about these items. And then in May and June, if their boards have approved it in April timeframe, we'll come to you for the actual amending that fare ordinance. And we have to read the whole ordinance unless you guys unanimously vote to waive the full reading of it. And then you guys have that authority to send that down to MTS and NCD to make those changes. Another one is, and this is a long one, but and we don't generally bring these too often to the Transportation Committee. They'll usually go to Executive Committee and Board, but you do have the delegated authority to do some financial transactions. Chair Zito had asked me about this one. The regional plan is something you provide input and oversight on. Mario just mentioned, we just approved the plan last December. The next one is 4 years from now. That sounds like a long time, but we will be starting on it sooner than later. Actually, not so soon. This time we're going to take a deep breath, let the planning department rest a little bit. But later this year, we'll start bringing items back, maybe not even until next year for Transportation Committee to start the 2029 plan update. But that definitely will spend a lot of time with the committee over the next couple of years talking about the regional plan. The CTSA and the CTSA board is another big function of that. You have approval for that. That item will be discussed a little bit in Jenny's items later today, and it'll be a big part of some discussions over the next few months of how do we remove or change the CTSA's matters around a little bit. You have a representative that serves on the CTSA board. Council member Jewel Edson has been that member for probably 2-3 years, and I think she's been happy to continue serving as that representative from the TC on the CTSA's board. Another one is and again, you're going to be hearing about this today and over the next few months, is the 5310 oversight, providing the input on the project selection criteria for that, as well as other grant funding programs like the active programs and the other transportation ones. So that's probably in the next slide, you'll see of the different things we'll be talking about. Some of these are the big ones we'd like to bring back to you, but here's where we'll like to hear from you of these items we've proposed for the next year. Are there other ones you would like to hear about? A big one that will be coming starting next month, and then the month after will be the Regional Active Transportation Plan call for projects. This one's always a very exciting one. The jurisdictions can generally apply for projects for this one, and so there's a lot of skin in the game from all the TC and board members on this one. The Specialized Transportation Grant Program, Cycle 14, and the AFA Cycle 3. Those are both specialized transportation programs that provide resources for those who can't ride regular fixed transit. You'll be hearing a lot about that in the coming months about how we formulate that call for projects. I mentioned the transit fare study. That will be coming over the next 3-4 months, and that's going to generate a lot of discussion from you and MTS and NCTD's boards. Express lanes projects, the board just last week heard the managed lanes or Express Lanes 101. They'll be hearing more about that, but we'll also bring that to you as well to get your input on that. And then transit project development kind of covers a lot of things, but we've just started planning on 6 rapid routes to do the planning and design work for that. We'll be bringing those to you to talk about the alternatives on those, get your thoughts on that. The airport ATC connection, the transit connection to that is one of those we'll be bringing. San Ysidro, I think we heard a little bit about that. A lot of transit projects are being front loaded from the regional plan and trying to get moved forward sooner than later. And so we'll be hearing a lot more about that.
And then I'll just add, we didn't catch this on the slide, but we also have a lot of joint projects with Caltrans going on right now. And so those will definitely be updates coming to this committee. I think our theme for Transportation Committee this year is project delivery. There's a lot of work that we're doing internally to improve our monitoring of our project implementation, watching our budget to actual scope, risks, and we want to be having those conversations with this committee on each of those major projects. So lots of project discussions this year, I think, to expect.
All good?
Over to you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. We will go ahead and start with public comment. Francesca?
Thank you. If you're online and you'd like to speak to this item, please raise your hand. Cesar Javier will be first.
Thank you, SANDAG. Time to learn, time to teach, time to teach, time to learn. We appreciate this discussion because it only manifests some kind of flexibility, some kind of awareness that we have to journey on the configuration of the times. Geography, demography, culture, political, and thank you. We are trying to get a picture on how we respond to these changes. And it calls for, number one, the right people on that leadership. Number two is that kind of preparedness. You see, like us, when we see a particular unit in our home, hey, honey, let's do slowly on other projects. Let's focus on the emergency call we call Tijuana River pollution solution. It has been 1993 and only in 2024, oh, there is really a crisis because it smells rotten egg. This is a metaphor on this particular planning. And so we asked our thinkers that flexibility as part of the work plan. And hopefully we could identify subjects that would lead into it. Preparedness, what else? Conservation, protection, defense, if only to use that.
Thank you. Your time has expired. We have one additional public comment. Leif Genzer, you can go ahead.
Good morning. Just really short, that all of that looks great, but I want to encourage you again, if you implement rapid bus routes, be inspired by existing standards like the ITDP Bus Rapid Transit Guide. Don't just implement fewer stops and merge buses into traffic. We need dedicated bus lanes if you choose to do buses. We need buses to be the best version that they can be. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you. So opening it up for discussion, do any committee members have any input or feedback on the topic? Specifically thinking of what was going on in the past year or so? Yes, Jennifer. Thank you.
With regard to the express lanes projects, will we also be discussing HOV lanes or just the pay to ride lanes?
Well, funny you should ask that one. We've had a discussion with the board last week, and the next projects rather are the conversion of the HOV to express lanes on the 5 and the 805. So yes, we are talking about the HOV lanes because the project is to really improve those lanes and have them operate better by adding some new management strategies to the lanes.
And also, Councilmember Dillard and I were just talking about, there's never been much of a discussion about adding any type of HOV or express lanes that I know of to Highway 8. And there is quite a, I mean, I avoid it. I'm especially during any type of rush hour, but I'm able to. I mean, I have an alternate route or the trolley. So I just don't recall any discussion around Highway 8, and that's a pretty congested.
So there was a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan done for I-8 last year. I believe it included, and I'm looking back at my team who worked on that project, managed lanes in the future on the I-8.
Other input, comments, thoughts? Yes, Mayor Sanchez.
Yes, thank you very much. I look forward to discussing ways to better connect with the airport. As you all know, Terminal 1 was recently completed, and it's got a lot of people attending and or participating. It's something that I think that we really need to start having deeper discussions about, if in fact it's something that we're going to be able to do. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Good topic. I second that thought. Being someone who's taken the free shuttle frequently times and realizing that 20-minute frequencies is not good enough on the shuttle. Any other comments or inputs? Okay, yeah, hey, go ahead, Mr. Hutchinson.
Thank you. I'm hoping there's going to be more future discussion about rural road connectivity. I think one of the chief concerns of the eastern half of the county is evacuation and access in the event of an emergency. And I know there have been a couple of projects that have already been discussed, and one of which is pretty much on its way. But there's room for a lot more discussion. I hope that's going to take place.
Yeah, Robin, oops. Did you have something to add?
I was just going to say, yes, definitely. Hopefully, you know, we have already started having sort of regular convenings with the associated planning groups as well as the county and Caltrans to talk about the rural and unincorporated area. We're thinking about maybe bringing an item to the board retreat to continue this conversation. And then I think it would make a lot of sense to bring some of those discussions to this committee as well. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be great. I could see some pretty interesting conversations too, because I think connectivity, again, a lot of people in the rural area think mostly about it from the perspective of getting out or evacuation or their cars. But from someone who likes to do the things that I like to do, it's also can be a pretty scary area to bike in as well and get around with other modes of transportation. So I've always thought, well, are there creative ideas that could be thought of in the future where you have class 1 facilities that could be converted into evacuation routes or things like that? Maybe there's during a fire, interesting conversations that could be had in the future. I'll put out there just one of the things I will start it out by saying I think we've been doing better about this. But one of the other things that that I think we can focus on, and maybe as we figure out a way to capture this and make sure that when topics come back in the future, but we used to have a regular issue of committee members feeling like when topics came to the committee, there wasn't any ability to make a decision at that point. It's like either do this or we're screwed, right? And so, and I think one of the great examples of that is just from the perspective of with the grant procedures and things like that, we should, being clear what flexibility we have and making sure if it's like, okay, if most of our flexibility is determining grant the scoring requirements, and then after that it's out of our hands, then let's make sure everybody knows that and that we're really clear and crisp on the scoring requirements and everybody has a good feel for that. Because then when it comes back and we say, well, this is how it came out, you can either accept or deny, then we know we're going to either accept or not deny and not feel like the power's out of us. But we've had as I said, I personally believe I've been feeling less of that over time, but so the staff has been improving, but I also think there's always area for improvement in that space. Any other comments or input on this topic? But looking forward to some interesting discussions about priorities. I mean, the one other thing that comes to mind to me as well is I don't know, this is not something that we've generally had a role in, but as recommendations come out of either from the audits from ITAC or from even the audit committee as they change policies or procedures of this committee, having that discussed here would be interesting as well to me. Just like what, or could we potentially do some fine tweaks of what's going to change based upon these results as well? But those are a couple things that come to mind for me. Anything else that people wanted to raise? Otherwise, thanks for the presentation. Good to have. This was a discussion item, and we will go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is going to be handled by Michelle Smith and Naomi Young.
All right, good morning. Good morning, Chair and committee members. This item presents our short-term revenue forecast, a standard report brought to our oversight committees and our board every February. The forecast provides critical revenue estimates for 3 primary funding sources that keep our region moving. TDA, which is the state sales tax share, FTA, our federal formula programs, and Transnet, of course, our local sales tax. So to provide some historical context, this first slide shows a comprehensive look at Transnet actuals versus forecast dating back to 2019. To help you navigate this chart, the blue bars represent the actual revenues collected through 2025. The gray bars show the forecast previously approved by the board in February 2025, and the pink bars represent the revised forecast that we are presenting to you today. Last year, we took a conservative approach and revised the 2025 forecast down to $420 million, as shown in gray. However, the economy proved resilient. Actual revenues came in at $427 million. While this was flat compared to FY 2024, it exceeded our conservative estimate. Based on this ongoing trend of higher than expected returns, staff is recommending an upward adjustment for FY 2026. We are proposing a total increase of $14.7 million for the current fiscal year. This ensures our budget aligns with actual economic reality and gives our partner agencies more accurate funding targets. Looking further out, the total projected increase from 2026 through 2031 is $91 million compared to last year's forecast. This slide breaks down how the growth is distributed across the various Transnet buckets. On these charts, the left side represents last year's forecast, and the right side represents the updated figures we are presenting to you today. The green numbers at the top highlight the total difference. They are maroon numbers at the top, highlight the total difference between the two. So where does our money go? As a reminder, after the 2% off the top, the administration and bike program seen in those bottom slivers, the remaining funds are allocated as follows. 38% goes toward the Major Corridors program, which is that purple section. 8.1% go to transit operations, which is the green section. 16.5% goes to transit system improvements. Those are direct funds to MTS and NCTD. And then 29.1%, which is that top maroon section, go towards local streets and roads, which are direct funds to local jurisdictions. The updated forecast ensures that every one of these categories sees a proportional share of that $91 million increase over the next 6 years. So the FY 2026 estimates. So for the current fiscal year, we are seeing steady moderate growth. Transnet, we are looking at $436 million, reflecting a 2% growth rate over current year. TDA, $205.7 million, and an FTA, roughly $172 million. If you look at tables 1 and 2 of your report, you'll see how these figures compare to last year's projections. Notably, TDA, as shown on this slide, we're projecting to come in at $11.2 million higher than previously estimated. So what does this mean for our local partners? Upon board approval, these estimates provide $69 million for transit system improvements and $138 million for local jurisdictions to put towards streets and roads, as shown in table 2 in your report for the increase in Transnet revenues. We don't come to these numbers in a vacuum. As detailed in attachment 2 of your staff report, that we use a robust methodology involving 3 independent nationally recognized forecasts, SANDAG's regional population growth projections, and a peer review process, which was completed in November of 2025 to validate our approach. Looking further ahead, as shown in your attachment 3, we project an estimated 2% annual growth through FY 2031. Please note that the Federal Transportation Administration revenues are to remain flat until a new transportation bill is passed. So what are our next steps? These figures are the foundation of upcoming budget cycles. Over the next few months, you will see the SANDAG draft 27 budget, the updated capital improvement programs from the local agencies and the transit agencies, and future RTIP amendments. Following the board's approval next week, we will send out these updated estimates to all the local jurisdictions to develop their annual budgets. So we are here today to request your recommendation to the board. We also have Naomi Young, our Principal Economic Research Analyst, available to answer any specific technical questions. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Can we start with public speakers on this topic?
Thank you, Chair. We have one speaker on this item, Cesar Javier. You can go ahead.
Very interesting. We have discussed about the proposed work plan visioning, and now we are here visioning about money. In our experience at the City Hall Council meeting, we heard and written those facts, such as, oh, we have to immediately approve the funding or refunding to SANDAG of a certain amount. Now, it appears into our mind now that SANDAG is the seller, service provider, because that's the authority handed by Uncle Sam, handed by the state and other local contributors on that particular donut. $805 million for 2026, estimated by our thinkers. Now, how do we appropriate this to every unincorporated and city who are this recipient of these services from SANDAG? Collection of thinkers, the right people to provide solution, ensuring that this donut will be properly consumed to zero. That is public administration's principle, from something to zero. We asked that this should be today, tomorrow, and continuously for discussion, because this is our taxpayer
Thank you very
stake.
much. Your time has expired. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Are there any committee member comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve staff recommendation.
So moved.
Moved by
I was
Sanchez.
going to say, I see the reason for doing the percentage increase as basically being fair to all of the different categories. So it seems like the fairest thing to do.
Equitable, yeah. So motion by Sanchez, second by Fleming.
Second.
And thank you, Michelle and Naomi. Very easy to support good news, I think. So I appreciate the clear and concise presentation. That'll call for the vote.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, thank you. As noted earlier, with that, we're moving ahead an item, and we're going to go to item number 7, the SANDAG Grant Program Overview and Quarterly Status Update with Jenny and Tueri. I do believe I heard a request that you're hoping for questions during the presentation even, so stay engaged and please feel to let me know if you want to jump in and ask a question of staff during the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you and good morning, Chair and Transportation Committee members. Again, I'm Tuari Faola, Deputy Director of Regional Planning for our Sustainable Communities Program, and I'm joined here by Jenny Russo, who is our Grants Program Manager, and we're here to give you a quarterly update, status update on our grants, but also, more importantly, we're here to talk to you about some of the recent changes that have happened within the grants program over the last about 6 or so months. So Jenny, I know may be a very familiar face to you when it comes to grants and talking about our grants program. And the reason that I am here joining Jenny is because we recently did move the grants program into regional planning. And I feel like some of the conversations that Robin and Brian had earlier kind of set us up for this discussion, because what we're doing is really looking at how the grants are very complementary to the work that we do in regional planning, from when we're developing the call for projects all the way to the implementation. A lot of that work is supporting the plans that we do, from our regional plan to the coordinated plan that was mentioned earlier. And so this gives us an opportunity to really better sync up our program areas. So Jenny's going to go briefly into talking about some of the 9 different programs that we cover for grants, and then I'll dive into some of the changes that we've identified in areas for opportunity with that merger and bringing grants into planning. And then we'll, like we said, we're happy to stop us, interrupt, ask questions, and give us some feedback. So I'll turn it over to Jenny.
Thanks. And just I'll jump in at this point and just clarify one point because I'm sure nobody else was confused when they heard that. When I first heard regional planning, it's like, oh, all the grants are going to the regional planning committee, but you're actually talking about the internal organization, not the actual committee itself, just for clarity.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So as Tori mentioned, we have 9 competitive grant programs that we offer through our various programs. 4 of them are shown on this slide. So the first 4 I kind of wanted to remind you of are funded by the Transnet Extension Ordinance. So on the left side are 2 of our bigger programs, the Smart Growth Incentive Program, or SGIP, and the Active Transportation Grant Program, or ATGP. These are the programs that fund our local jurisdiction projects. So they do lots of active projects, so sidewalks, transportation improvements to connect to housing, transit, things like that. Really a lot of work that happens in here, as Tori mentioned, that supports the regional plan. So these have been active since about 2009, and collectively they've awarded over 140 million to about 195 projects throughout the region. So you can see there's some images here on projects that were completed in the last few years. On the top right is the Environmental Mitigation Program, Land Management Grant Program. So this program is for some of our local agencies, our federal and state partners, and a lot of our nonprofits that manage pristine lands. And it's to help with habitat restoration, species conservation, and things like that. So that program has awarded about 18 million around the same time frame, 2008, 2009, to about 136 projects. And then the last one in the bottom corner is the Senior Mini Grant Program. This is one of our specialized transportation grant programs. This funds programs for our senior population, so those that are age 50 or older, and we've awarded 27 million for about 97 projects. And then we also have, as you can see on this slide, a number of programs that are funded by federal and state resources as well. So on the top left is the Access for All program. This is funded by the state. There's a 10-cent tax that's levied if you take an Uber or Lyft trip, and it goes into this fund that we use to provide wheelchair accessible service, because if you're aware, those services aren't exactly accessible through Uber and Lyft. So this program statewide is helping to bridge that gap and to provide an on-demand service for individuals with disabilities. Also complementing that on the right side on the top is the Section 5310 grant program we talked about a little bit earlier. We'll talk about it again. This is funds coming from the Federal Transit Administration. This is also for individuals with disabilities and our senior population. So both of these programs complement each other very well. As you can imagine, they target our most vulnerable population, and they really help folks get to everyday trips that they need. So medical appointments, senior centers, things like that. So these are a lifeline service that really impacts our community. In the middle there is the Regional Active Transportation Program, or ATP. This program is a little bit bigger than what's shown here, but our role in our region is to manage just a portion of it on behalf of the state. This is a mixture of state and federal funds coming through the California Transportation Commission. And since the program started back in 2014, we've granted about 145 million to 42 projects throughout our region. So this one is big for our local jurisdictions. It funds a lot of bike projects. And you can see an image here on the slide of an example. Down on the bottom are our newer grant programs. So the one on the left is the Housing Acceleration Program. This is funded through the state through the REAP dollars. And this program has been really beneficial to our local jurisdictions to help do planning and capital projects that can help promote increased housing in our region, as we know that's very, very much needed. So about 14 million over the last 2 cycles to about 22 projects. And then lastly, to round it out is a flexible fleet pilot grant program that you're going to hear about in the next item. This is our upcoming program that we're excited to bring to you today. So just to complement Chair Zito's comment about what the process is. So to grant these funds out, we use what's called a call for projects process. The steps of what that looks like are shown here on the slide. The 2 pieces where all of you have the most say and we really look for you to kind of be here and provide some input to us are in step 1 and step 5 that I'll go through. So step 1 is the absolute most critical part for all of you to be participating in. This is where we bring to you the call for projects. So the evaluation criteria, the eligibility, nuances about the program, if there's anything special about how that funding would be distributed, like if we were doing a specific amount for a category or things like that, all of that comes to you twice. We bring it to you first for information and to receive input. Usually at that time, we're also bringing you input we've received from stakeholders and our working groups. And that's where we're looking for feedback from you. If there's something in there that's not clear or something that you want us to change or add, all of that kind of piece, that's the critical step to do that. We will then take that input, bring it back, make some adjustments, and then we'll return here with a final version to make sure that it meets what all of you are looking for. And then we ask for that recommendation to go to our board. Once it gets approved by the board, that program is set. So we run through the remaining steps that are on here, and then we bring to you the results of that outcome. So it's really important that that step is here, that everyone can know kind of what that will look like on the outset as as the projects come back, that you know what they look like. So once it gets approved by the board, we issue our call for projects. All of them have a standard 90-day application window, so folks can spend the time and work on applications. Then they come in to us. We work on their evaluation and using that criteria that was approved by the board and determine those funding recommendations that then come back to you for review. And we go through the approval process and asking for it. After that, they get implemented. So we sign grant agreements, we issue notices to proceed, and we monitor those projects for 3 years, 5 years. It kind of depends on the type of program. You will see what each of those programs is happening. We do bring quarterly reports to all of you. So there is a quarterly report attached in today's agenda. So you can see things like how are projects performing? Is there something that we're concerned about? We also like to bring you success stories. So we'll show you pictures if they're before and after photos, things like that. So you can really understand where this money is going and what that impact looks like. And so from there, I'll turn it over to Tori, and she's going to talk to you about our work plan.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. So again, as we've transitioned the grants team into the regional planning department within SANDAG, we've really been looking at areas of opportunities for us to improve how we administer our grants, how we can ensure long-term funding for some of those programs that Jenny mentioned, and then also how we can reduce risk when we are ensuring our compliance with some of our funding partners. As she mentioned and went through that list, not all of the funding that we receive comes from just SANDAG, but also from our federal and state partners. So this slide here is just highlighting a couple of priority items that the team has identified and that we're working on immediately so that we can start to begin improving our grants process. Process improvements, it's an area that we've already started implementing. Some of the recommendations that we have within the process improvements identified here on the slide actually came out of our most recent Smart Growth Incentive Program call for projects. We brought some of these things to you in December where we talked about how we can better streamline our applications, how we can make sure that the information that we're providing when we're talking about changes in the grants program are very clear to all of those who might be impacted and really just reducing errors. So those are some of the process improvements that are already been implemented and that were identified and brought to you last or a couple months ago. As we begin to implement those process improvements, we also have a standard operating procedures document that we want to make sure that we're capturing all of those changes in. And so this is a document that our entire grants team uses to help understand and guide the process, the things that Jenny outlined for the steps. All of those things are included in that. And especially as we are now having grants integrated into regional planning, this leaves open the opportunity for planning staff to help support our grants team in implementing some of these programs. And so this is a document that they'll use as well to guide and ensure that all of the proper steps and procedures are taken. And this is something that the agency is making sure that we're doing for not just our grants program, but for all of our programs, as it's an important part of succession planning and ensuring that all of the information is able to flow from one person to another. Evaluating strategic partnerships is an area that we intend to really actually come back and have some thorough conversations with you. Many of our grants programs are oversubscribed and we don't have enough funding to be able to, give out money to everyone who wants to do the good things for serving our community. And so, looking at strategic partnerships that allow us to be able to leverage, whether it's private funding or some of their administration skills to help us to improve these programs or administer them, is something that we're hoping to be able to explore more. We currently do this with our Housing Acceleration Program, where we use a nonprofit who we took some of the REAP 2.0 funds and leveraged it with philanthropic money and brought that together to make the pot bigger to support a housing trust fund that developers were able to apply for, and that they also help administer that grant program while also complying with all of the state requirements. So that's something that we're exploring with and looking at other opportunities that we can do with the other programs that were identified on the prior slides. And we'll be wanting to have more future conversations about that. And so there are a lot of different things that are come with the grant programs. Yes.
You said you could.
Yes, please.
Ask questions while you're speaking.
Absolutely.
So I did want to compliment staff on that there was a program this past year that was with nonprofits. But it went directly to projects. So the cities did not know about it. And I was wondering, because some of the things that were, have changes in terms of figuring out how to help make the, say, 100% affordable projects happen, is that a main piece of it has always been being able to provide some kind of gap funding.
Yes.
Right, gap funding. And because of redevelopment going away and all these other things happening, our fund, in lieu funds, are disappearing. And so it would be really helpful to, I think, expand that to kind of capture 100% affordable projects, because I don't think that any of them really understood or heard that this was happening. When I looked at the list of projects that were able to compete and get funded, I think that there were a lot that did not understand that that was available, and perhaps just making sure. I mean, that's what I would like to see happen, because for many of us on the RENA numbers, it's not the moderate or market rate, it's the low and very low that are not being built. And that's because they tend to be built as standalone 100% affordable projects. And those are the most needy. Those are the most that are needed by the communities, right? And if we could maybe more focus on those.
Yeah. And
is that something that other cities are having issues with?
Yeah, if I can just respond to that. So thank you for the comment and for the question about the Housing Trust Fund. So the Housing Acceleration Program and the funding that we got from the state, we used part of the funding that we gave to cities to do planning, as well as some of their capital dollars. And that for everyone who applied, they all were fully funded for that. For the trust fund part, the money that we partnered with the foundation, one of the unique aspects that we asked, and one of the unique things with that partnership is that the funds be allowed to be used as either grant funded or as revolving loans so that the money could potentially, like, because we do know that there were some affordable housing developers who told us that they wanted to see the funding not just be only in a grant term, but because they're nonprofits and they're really focused on 100% affordable housing, and there is the lack of money coming to our region. They wanted to see the funds to be able to stay in the region as a revolving loan. So therefore, they would take the money, use it on this project, and it would still be within the region for them to be able to compete and have those funds available for future projects. And so while some of the funds were distributed as grants based on the individual's applications, some of them were awarded as revolving loans. And so that money will funnel back into the nonprofit, the San Diego Foundation, as well as they are continuing to pursue and again, leveraging these dollars to bring in more philanthropic funding to grow the pot so that we can then have future calls that they can support some of those projects. But most, we did have a requirement as part of the money, has to be done with all of the state's requirements. And so affordable housing and affordability was a big component for that. So we're hoping to be able to see that pot continue to grow. And that's part of, I think, what we are taking our lessons learned out of this program, thinking about how we can leverage some of that as we look at other grant programs and see the funding continue to revolve within the region and not just be a one-time injection of funds, then it disappears. And then, of course, through our government relations committee, we're consistently advocating for some of that money to come back to our region.
Right, because some other projects, they have a component of affordable, and that's what they're looking for too, to build those assistance for that. But I think our greatest need is to try to get those 100% projects off the ground. The ones that have a 10 or 15% requirement, they can find the money much easier than, say, projects that need that are building the 100% affordable. Thanks. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience of, having really great 100% projects, but they need that gap funding assistance, which is, it could be like $3 to $5 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've heard that from plenty of other developers who say that it's a great need.
Thank you.
Not sure if you were staring at me because Solana Beach has been sitting on one for a decade, but yes, it's a common experience, I think. Okay, sure. Anyway, continue. Thank you.
Okay, now this is great. Again, feel free to stop as we continue to go through. But as I was saying, and as we talked about, so many of these different grant programs, they do come with a variety of different risks and obligations and complexities. And so the team is really looking at how we can start to reduce or mitigate some of those risks. This is either from leaning on lessons learned, as we've been, administering some of these grant programs for a long time and looking at how we've come across challenges or risk over prior grant cycles, as well as using data to help us to anticipate some of those risks. But one program area, the last bullet here on this slide that we really wanted to highlight, and I'll talk a bit more about with this committee, is our FDA Section 5310. And this is a program that provides funding for our specialized transportation grant program. This is coupled with our Transnet Senior Mini Grants. And one of the things as well, both of those funding programs provide and allow for eligible grantees to provide mobility services for older adults and people with disabilities, and covers operational costs associated with providing those services. The 5310 program specifically allows for funds to be used on capital assets. And what that has resulted in is that we have vehicles that SANDAG is purchasing. So it's not just SANDAG simply giving out funds for operating these services to grantees to go and provide these services for our elderly population or people with disabilities. This is actually SANDAG purchasing vehicles, and we've actually purchased over 100 vehicles that are currently operating within the program, and SANDAG is holding the title when we're giving these out to grantees. And so this is an area that we've identified as a risk, and SANDAG owning the title and, all of the liabilities that come along with that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the Section 5310 and something that we expect to come back and have further discussions with this committee on more. Certainly, we want to be talking about strategic partnerships. This is one of those, as several of our other programs, that is oversubscribed, and we get more people wanting to apply for this funding than we have money available. And so thinking about how there might be partnerships that we haven't explored out there where we could bring additional funding so that we can have more services within our region for this is an area that we want to talk about. We've also started reaching out to peer agencies to understand when they are getting their 5310 funds, how are they using it? Are they doing it in the same way that we're doing by purchasing vehicles, or are they using it primarily on operating funds? But a priority area that we really do want to focus on when looking at our risk is whether we should continue to buy and maintain the vehicle titles for these grant recipients. And as I mentioned, our agency has over 100 vehicles operating this program, and where we're holding the title. And this is, it also comes with the requirements that when it's funded through the federal government, there are also federal asset guidelines that we have to follow. This is something that we're having to follow for this program. It's something that now Jenny's going to be talking to you about the Flexible Fleets Grant Program, and that's now federally funded. And so they'll have to comply with those same type of federal asset guidelines. So it's just something for us to consider. And when we're talking about risk and responsibility, and we're also looking at whether or not, when we're doing this, should the funds continue to be used primarily on buying vehicles, or should we look at a different split where more of the money goes towards operations? And maybe if we look at some of these partnerships, then that can help fill the gap when it comes to other needs within the program. And Brian mentioned earlier today, and what's relevant to this conversation is thinking about the CTSA's recompete as part of the recommendations that came out of the coordinated plan. And, so looking at how we operate this program, how we look at that recompete is something that we'll also be taking into consideration as we evaluate this program, and Brian and the team come back and have further discussions with this committee on that recompete option. So I do just want to say that us looking at this program, looking at all of the things in grants is consistent with what we're doing across the agency. We're really trying to look and understand the risks that we have within this program, within all of our grant programs, and just evaluating whether or not it makes sense for how we're currently doing it, and not just continuing to go with the status quo, but making sure that the risk and what we're providing for the community, it matches. And so that's something we'll continue to do, and we're looking forward to having further discussions with this committee. Again, this is the start of our conversations, and we want to have hear from you, understand if these are the things that you think we should be focusing on, and if there are other ideas that you have for us. But we look forward to coming back and having further discussions. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, if there are no questions, to talk about our quarterly update.
I have a question.
Yes.
I absolutely agree regarding the risk associated with SANDAG owning these vehicles. It seems like a very unnecessary risk. Is there an opportunity to still be in compliance with federal guidelines by outsourcing this to a third party, for instance?
That is what we are looking into right now. So we're talking to our federal partners. We're looking at peer agencies across the state and the country and trying to figure out if there's a better model, less risky model for us to get these funds out.
And I'm gonna get a little bit out of subject, but kind of go there, come back. I think from an agency perspective, that's what we're trying to do across the board on all the programs, tolling, whatever, going into best practices, minimizing the risk exposure for the agency. I think we may have, we have two bona fide operators here. They're the operators for transit. I understand there's, the special needs transit also. But definitely we have to look at how others are doing it and looking at the risk exposure for the agency.
All right, so switching a little bit to talk to you about our quarterly status. So as I mentioned earlier, we bring a quarterly status update to this committee so you can see all of the projects that are active and how they are performing. You will see this is all included in attachment 1. So we do have 9 grant programs, as I mentioned earlier, but following Board Policy 1, they're kind of split between which committee has purview. So the programs that really we're looking for Transportation Committee to kind of keep an eye on is the Access for All program, the Active Transportation Grant Program, the Senior Mini Grant Program, and the Section 5310. So those are primarily, as we've been talking about today, those services that are out and that are operating. Something else that you'll notice that's highlighted in this slide, and it's in the attachment, is we use the term watch list. So the watch list is really just a list of projects that we're watching. And so it either means that there's some challenges with that grantee, either on compliance, like with grant agreement terms, or something related to performance. So I will talk about the projects that are on the watch list just kind of briefly, but if you're wondering what that term means, that's really what it means. It's not a stigma. It's not intended to be that for a grant recipient. It's just to note and kind of flag, hey, here's a project that we're concerned about for whatever reason, and we're trying to work with those grantees to bring them into compliance. And then if there's some reason that something is just really sticking and we're having trouble with it, we would bring those items to you here. And you have seen some of those in the past where we've brought, for example, like schedule extensions for someone who just needs more time to be able to complete their scope of work. So you will see those at times connected to this quarterly report. There aren't any in today's, thankfully, but just to kind of give you an update on what that means. So this quarterly report covers the grant period through December 31st. So there's a little bit of a gap in time between today and there. So during the period, we had 33 active projects. Most of these were our Specialized Transportation Grant Program. As you'll notice, those are those vehicle projects that are out and that are operating. So we didn't have any that were completed in this period. We had a whole slew of them in the prior period. We've got another set that are just right on the cusp that we'll probably be bringing to you in the next quarterly. But the details on each of those programs, how much is expended, how much is remaining, is included in that report. So you can kind of see how things are moving. We had 8 projects on our watch list. Mostly those fall into 3 different categories. So one of them is an invoice issue with an insurance issue with the grantee that we're trying to work on and to bring them into compliance. The other one is some invoicing errors and some challenges that we're having. We're also working on those. So just providing as much technical assistance as we can with folks, especially for those that have federal funds. There's very restrictive rules about what you can and can't do. So sometimes those are just tricky to kind of work through. And the other one is we have 5 projects that are behind on meeting performance targets. This is not unusual. It's just something that we note. Typically, it's just kind of monitoring those with that grantee. And some of them may need a schedule extension of a few months just to kind of continue that on. But it's based on what they had projected in their original application. So nothing alarming in here per se, but we do try to bring those to you so you're kind of aware of what's going on in the grant program if you had a question about something that's happening. And then we also had a grantee that requested an amendment during the prior quarterly period. It's noted here. It was approved in that window, and so we're working on signing and executing that grant amendment. And so with that, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions. And as Tori mentioned and Mario mentioned, we're really looking for input from you on our work plans. If there's anything that we've missed, you want us to look into, if there's information you're just needing on the grant programs, where we're headed, things like that, we're happy to take that input. So I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Francesca, do we have any public speakers?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public speaker, Cesar Javier.
Clearly, the process is taught. Thank you. What lessons could we learn from these grants handed to the regions, political units, cities, and unincorporated? We learned in the past that SANDAG took over Transnet from the county. We want to know what happened to these grants to ourselves, SANDAG, if I may say that. Also, we want an update. What happened to the grants handed to the city of San Diego on transportation mobility? Aside from these bike lanes, etc., etc., we want to see it. This is our city, and we should be, public trust must be on a level field, meaning We expect from our public servants, City of San Diego, 11 elected officials, transparency, equity, accountability. Thank you, SANDAG, for this opportunity. And lastly, we are here not to compete with the thinkers. We are the data provider from the front line, a community that is underserved. Look at our community potholes. That is not the standard of transportation service as far as road is concerned. Is that how the grants are spent? Don't we have some kind of standard? Hey, I gave you a grant and it doesn't fall on the standard. That should be the kind of authority, or shall we say responsibility, of the grant provider, if I may humbly explain that. We need, sir, some.
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Caesar. Any committee member comments on this particular topic? Yes, Ms. Linz.
Thank you, Chair. I just reflecting on the presentation, I realize it's a high level presentation and there's more below, and I understand that that's not everything's being presented. But what I would like, this is a very important source of money for so many agencies and entities, and they will expect us to do our very best to manage it so that the money is spent in a timely manner, and that that's a value to people, that it's spent in a timely manner. So I'm really curious about the watch list and what the watch list tells us, and I wonder if there are some lessons learned that we already are looking at. For instance, if there's, and I don't know the details, but just as an example, if there's an insurance issue, are there certain criteria that we require for anyone to even be considered for the grant that have to do with insurance that could help us in advance to avoid an insurance issue down the road? And as I said, I don't know the details, but for instance, the invoicing issue, there are dozens of agencies here who are doing it correctly. So there's two, I think I heard you say, that are having some trouble, and they're on the watch list. So can SANDAG do anything as far as lessons learned to help as far as a structure of how to translate what the people who are doing it right are doing and how that would inform the people? So I think you maybe get my point. I don't need to go any further, but I would hope that SANDAG would look into and use those as very valuable pieces of information to see how we could improve and help all the entities stay on track.
Yeah, and I would say that the large amount of challenges that you've kind of seen in this report these are nonprofits, so they don't have these big administrative units to be able to do them. So we've been doing a lot more technical assistance with folks as we talk about these new grant programs that will be coming forward. There's definitely some lessons learned in those that we can put into play, really starting kind of at the beginning to make sure people know what they need to do, providing tools and resources for them, and then watching for that as they apply and doing a better assessment of who folks are. Do they have the ability to implement programs and all these sorts of things, so we can identify those things up front and make sure that we're awarding funding to folks that really can comply. And as you said, like, there's lots of people that know how to do this and do this very well. So how do we make sure that that's where we're getting that funding into?
With insurance specifically, that's one of the areas that we're studying in the risk analysis right now, having conversations with our insurance company and having conversations with our legal team to see what we can do about the insurance requirements, particularly for the nonprofit organizations that can't necessarily meet the insurance requirements that we have in our grant agreements. But the other thing we're doing to help keep people off the watch list, particularly like the capital projects, is when we're reviewing the scope and schedule, when we get the grant applications, we're having engineers and qualified people review to determine if that is really reasonable and possible, because we were getting some applications where the scope and schedule just wasn't very realistic. And then folks were ending up on the watch list because they couldn't meet the grant deadlines with the funding.
And if I could, Chair, just follow up on that. And so one approach would be to be clearer up front. Yes, I understand that that's a really valid way forward. I wonder too, though, if we could also consider how we can help kind of mentor those who we would hope could become eligible, but maybe just need to learn from the best practices of those who are already eligible.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if I can get confirmation. It looks like we're temporarily without a quorum right now. Is that correct? Do we have alternates present that can fill? I believe Priya will be coming back, but I just want to make sure.
This is just a discussion item.
No, I know this one, right?
The flexible
but
fleets item.
The
though,
next one's
yes.
an action item, so, but anyway, and we can only discuss. Any other comments on this particular item? I see no other comments. This was discussion. So can we go ahead and start the presentation? Just not discuss until,
Yes,
okay.
yes, Chair, we can go ahead and start the item, but we would not be able to take any action on it until we achieve our quorum again.
Okay, thanks. So thank you guys. Great job. Thanks for the update. We'll go ahead and go back to item number 6, the Flexible Fleets Pilot Grant Program Call for Projects. And Jenny, I guess you're still stuck there along with Kalisa that will present this.
All right. Well, we are very excited to be here today to talk to you about flexible fleet. So I'm joined with my colleague. This is Kalisa Bowling. She is a senior transportation planner in our planning department. So she and I have been working on this program for well over a year and a half, it seems like. So we're very happy to bring it to you. Just as a reminder of what the program is, what the goal is. So we are trying to expand shared mobility choices, enhancing our connections to transit, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. So the program is intended to provide just seed funding, that initial funding for projects to pilot, so that those can be evaluated and continue on beyond the grant term. So this is not intended to be a long-term funding for projects. It's just to get pilots out and to test them and see how do they perform in particular areas and what types of services work well and maybe what types don't. So we're trying to use this as a learning opportunity for our Flex Fleet program. So we've been before this committee several times last year. We've asked for your input. So as I was talking about earlier, bringing a draft to you and taking feedback, we've done that a couple of times. So today, the reason that we're here is that last year, our last meeting was last June. Because we're using federal funding sources in here, there's some nuances in the program that you had asked us to clarify or to check back on. So we have done that and checked with Caltrans and Federal Highways about things that are eligible and how things would function, things like that, just to really lock in on the eligibility. So what we're bringing to you today are the changes that we've had to make based on the input that we receive from those funding agencies, because we want to make sure that we're going to meet their requirements and we can reimburse folks and that this program can be very successful. So we're just going to update you on kind of what has happened since the last presentation in last June. So the develop of the program, just to kind of remind those of you or to bring those of you that are new up to speed, is we started this program last year. So we brought the draft criteria to the working groups and this committee for input. So following those, we made some revisions to our call for projects. And then it kind of disappeared. So you may have been wondering where it was. So over that summer, this is when we reached out to our federal funding agencies to get clarification on funding eligibility and things like that. And so we made additional changes based on the input that we received from them to the call for projects. And as many of us are very aware, there were a lot of executive orders coming out, a lot of changes happening at the federal government level. So we were also doing research on how those different things impact the program. So things like Title VI was a big one to kind of read into the nuances, understand what the new requirement is, and to be able to input those changes in the program. So that's substantively what's been going on kind of behind the scenes for you. So we're happy to be here today, present that final call for you. And the full call for projects is included in attachment 1. So how we got here is back in 2024, the board authorized a one-time allocation of our federal regional surface transportation program funding. So this is our RSTP. This is our formula dollars that come into the region. and set aside $5 million to set up a grant program. So of that, $4.5 million will be available through the program, and it can fund services all the way through 2029. So based on input from this committee, the maximum awards would be $1 million for a new pilot and $500,000 for what we're calling an enhanced pilot. I will clarify what that means. This is based on experience that we had on some of our flex fleet pilots that have already been out and operating, that there's a larger upfront cost when you're standing up a new service versus if you're doing a continuation of a service that's already been existing. So based on that funding and the award sizes, we anticipate we'll award somewhere between 3 to 5 pilots through the program, and all of the projects compete equally. So there isn't a set aside amount of funding for one type versus another. They're all going to kind of mix together, and we will see which programs are the most competitive and rise to the top. And all of our applicants will be required to provide a match of 11.47%. So this slide highlights the main eligibility for the program. So the first one is your eligible applicants. So this is all of our local jurisdictions, the state and federal agencies, because we know that we've heard that there are some entities that are looking at this program potentially. Also federal, so like our military, if they can input from this program would be great. Also tribes, transit districts, and the military, as I mentioned. So nonprofits and community organizations aren't directly eligible, but they could partner with one of those eligible applicants to pilot a service in their area. So next, there's 2 types of pilots that would be eligible, and this is based on the requirements that the federal funding agencies gave to us. So a new pilot is a service that's not currently operating or it's never operated in the past. Pretty straightforward. Services that are currently operated or that have operated in the past, they can only be eligible if 2 criteria are met. So first is that that service never received any funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation, because that's where this funding is coming from. And they don't fund, the funding that we have will not fund ongoing operational improvements. They don't allow it. So it has to be a pilot. That's why the restriction on it can't have prior US DOT funding. And the other piece is that the service has to be modified to improve or incorporate new growth. So an example could be the service area is changed or expanded, a different service model is being used, you're adding new project partners, or you're using a new technology. So you have to be making some kind of a change to what that service is or was in order for it to qualify under the program. And that's what we had some sticking points with the feds to really get some clarity from them about what that means. We have a lot of different types of services. I think a lot of us have thought about this in sort of the microtransit piece, but it could also be car share, neighborhood electric vehicles, micromobility, or a combination of modes. We've also heard some areas are looking at a combination of 2 or more modes potentially. So any of those types of services would be eligible. And then lastly, in terms of what types of costs would be eligible, it's anything for those service operations, so turnkey. And it could be either service that's provided directly by that applicant or through a contracted service. So this slide summarizes the changes that we made to the call for projects since you last saw it in June. So these are all of the things that, as you can see, have been coming out of our federal funding agencies or other regulatory changes that have happened in the last 6 months or so. So as we talked about in our prior presentation, the administration of equipment that we buy with federal funds is really onerous, and there's a lot of administrative burden that happens to us as the direct recipient and also the grantee as well. So there's a very high likelihood, just based on these services in this very short window of the grant period, that if someone were to buy, say, a vehicle or some large asset, it's not going to depreciate fast enough to where the interest from the federal government is going to be met. So to avoid folks having to repay the portion of it that the federal government paid for, we're proposing to remove equipment as an eligible cost, just so everybody doesn't have to deal with that. And those costs can really be spent on the actual operation of the service, which we've heard is really the highest demand of what folks are looking for. So this is our evaluation criteria. This has not changed since you saw it last year. So the criteria with the highest weight, as you can see, is financial stability, feasibility, and performance and connectivity. So we really want to make sure that these pilots are sound, that they can be sustained beyond the grant term, and that they're high performing and that they're feasible. We want to make sure that we're putting in something that can actually be successful to meet what the needs are of that particular community. So the full rubric where it breaks all of this out in detail is included for you in attachment 2. And if you have an enhanced pilot, so those are those existing services or previously existing, there are some additional prompts that an applicant is going to need to respond to that's under that feasibility and performance. And this is to make sure that we're awarding points for services that have demonstrated success and they would benefit from continuation. So we want to really make sure for those existing pilots that we're checking to see how did they perform and can this service be continued and what would that look like from a performance perspective. And speaking of performance, all of our grant programs have performance metrics where we're measuring how those things are performing and providing that input to you. So there's 4 main categories up here, as you can see on this slide, that we will be tracking. So all of these details on what each of these are is included in attachment 3. So this is the quarterly information that we'd be receiving from our grantees. We're not going to wait until the end of the pilot to see how it performed. We'll be tracking that all along the way and working with grantees to see if there's something that can be done in any of these areas, if there's a change that needs to be made to the service. We already know that works very well in this program from the existing flexible fleets. So we'll continue to do that practice to make sure that we've got really successful pilots that are out in our region. And all of that information, as I mentioned, would come to you, so you'll be able to see how are these services performing. And the final project would have a report about how it performed and to demonstrate overall what that success of that pilot looked like. And that would be coming here as part of that quarterly report as well. So this is our timeline of what we are anticipating. So following the meeting today, we're asking for your recommendation to ask the board to release the call for projects. The application period would open probably the first week of March is what we're looking for, and it would be open for 90 days, consistent with all of our other grant programs. So those applications would be due in the June timeframe. After that, we'd be reviewing those applications over the summer, making sure that everything is there, looking through scopes and budgets and schedules and things. And if we need to, talk to anybody about anything we might see, we can take care of all of that stuff. And our panel is going to be folks that have actually deployed existing flex fleet service. We really want to make sure that we're evaluating this by people that know this service and that can make sure that they're looking and determining using that criteria that we're funding this amount of funding to the most successful projects as we possibly can. So the funding recommendations will then be brought back to this committee in the fall. And from there, we would sign our grant agreements in the October-November timeframe, and projects could start, shortly thereafter, as soon as that grantee is ready to get up and running on that service. And so that service can complete all the way through 2029. We imagine most pilots would probably finish sooner than that. I think folks are really ready to go and want to see this money go out in the community, but potentially they could last as long as 2029 if someone is looking to stretch it that far, or if they've got additional funding that they're providing to allow it to continue, that may happen as well. And so the recommendation before you today is to ask for your recommendation to the board of directors to allow us to approve the call for projects and allow us to release it. So this concludes our presentation, and Kalisa and I are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We'll start with public comments. Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public comment, Cesar Javier.
Javier family. This is a cry for help, a cry for transparency, a cry to seek help because our community is behind all these results or product of SANDAG's transportation development. We as city residents would like to dream and hopefully dream come true by knowing how many grants they have gotten, the 11 elected officials, thinkers, from SANDAG's money, our tax money. We are curious because Supervisor Anderson doesn't mind helping us to solve the issue. I wonder why Councilor Rivera, who is supposed to be there, is absent, because we have reasons to believe that the intensity of applying for this grant is more heavy in preparation for political Hollywood performance we call re-election or election time. Could we not accept them right away, evaluate them right away, and tell them, please, you need not to use this grant because there is more a priority use of this money. Sorry, it ended.
Thank you. Your time
Thank
is
you very
expired.
much for learning.
We have one additional public comment, Ian Hembry. You can go ahead.
Thank you. So good morning, SANDAG Transportation Committee. My name is Ian Hembry, and I'm the Advocacy Manager with the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. We're calling on SANDAG and the cities and agencies that compose SANDAG to prioritize shared micromobility for the Flexible Fleets program. San Diego is the second largest metropolitan area in the United States without any kind of bike share or scooter share program. This is in spite of our amazing weather, our status as a popular tourist destination, and our increasing investment in safe cycling infrastructure across the county. When it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, shared micromobility provides by far the greatest reduction per dollar spent in comparison to other flexible fleet options. It also provides an option for people to try biking for the first time or to get back into it, as it drastically reduces the barrier to entry. When people new to San Diego, either visiting for the first time or moving here for work, reach out to us about bike share, they expect a region as populous and environmentally friendly as ours to have a robust program. Instead, we have to disappoint them with the fact that we lack any program whatsoever. We need to do better, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. And thanks again for the presentation. I think this is a good example of where input was given and we made some changes. Unfortunately, it took some time to work through those changes because of all the complexities of working with the federal or agencies and the grant money, but it was done. Are there any comments from committee members they'd like to make? Mayor Sanchez, go ahead.
I just have a question. So it has to be a new project. Does that mean that it has to be a completely different kind of model? Or can it be in a different, say, area, like this idea of micro transit and connection to, like, say, the Sprinter and getting people to in a place where less parking is available, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of similar model that, like, in Oceanside, we have the Go side, but that's downtown. But in the middle of our city, there's a new development around El Corazon. Would that be considered a new project, or would that be it would be enhanced in that it would, what was that?
It's enhanced pilot project.
It would be enhanced,
So
even though
would
it
be
has,
expanding the service area.
so even though the one on the coast would have no access or would not go all the way to the
So
middle.
you're talking about a new service. You're not talking about connecting those two
Not
services.
connecting at all.
That would be a new pilot project.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Fleming, did you
Let me, so it would connect in terms of the Sprinter, but could connect in terms of, but not the two.
So then it would be a new service
project.
area, a new pilot project.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fleming?
Further question regarding the evaluation, as I understood, the evaluation would be done by basically a committee or a group of peers that are providing similar services. My question is, which I guess on the surface of it, I like that idea. To me, it makes a lot of sense. But my question is more around, is there a method that SANDAG has in evaluating those individuals to make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Absolutely. So we typically kind of pre-screen and have an idea of folks that we're going to reach out to be an evaluator. We start that as soon as the call is released and kind of putting out a call for evaluators, but we don't actually seat our panel until those applications come in. And we have a conflict of interest screening that we do of them. So certainly can't be an applicant connected to an applicant, sub-applicant, something like that. But we also ask them a lot of questions about, have you had any involvement in this project or this applicant, that sort of thing. So it wouldn't be like a service provider, right? Like a circuit or a VIA or someone like that couldn't certainly be on this panel, anyone who's been an applicant, but we heavily screen all of our evaluators looking for conflicts of interest. And if someone does, we would recuse them from being on the panel.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I don't see. I did have a question, which is, I mean, my understanding is that the new pilots and the enhanced pilots will be competing all for the same pool of money. Is that correct? So
Yes.
This is our opportunity to talk about what the scoring criteria are. So can we perhaps dig into a little bit of how an enhanced pilot will compare to a new pilot in the scoring criteria? As an example, I see, the only place it's called out is in section 5, which is under feasibility and performance. But I'm assuming even with an enhanced pilot, we're going to expect some fiscal sustainability, which is section 1, meaning that it can continue in the future, that is going to provide the necessary connectivity. So how is the scoring going to work for an enhanced pilot as compared to a new pilot, or in these areas, just so we're all clear on this particular thing up front?
I mean, you said it perfectly. Right now, the way that the criteria is set, we only have it addressed in that one criteria. Because as we looked through this and kind of did some test scenarios and said, okay, if you have an enhanced pilot, how would this work through the criteria? Largely, we saw them as kind of being equal and not wanting to elevate one above the other. But that's certainly something, if you wanted to change or you wanted to add something in here, we could do that to evaluate them slightly differently. But we're trying to balance the two things in context, and how do we do that and make it straightforward for an applicant when they're trying to apply, as we've learned through some of the other programs. Don't make this super onerous either.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have an objection to the way it's done. I just want to make sure that we're clear that, so it sounds like feasibility and performance is the only area where enhanced pilot will be evaluated a little bit differently than a regular pilot, and they'll have to meet those additional scoring criteria to get full points there. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's an added component to that criteria
Right.
that, and I'm trying to see what page it's on. It's on the last page. Gosh, I don't have a page number on here in the
Page
table.
82 of the packet. I don't know about the staff report.
Yeah, it's just before the table where it has all the points outlined, that there's additional prompts that they need to respond to. So it's not that they're evaluated differently, it's an additional standard that sort of has to be met, that digs into how is this modification really going to perform, looking at your past project or your current project, and what modifications are you making? Like, is it going to change it? Is it going to improve new growth? That sort of thing. But other than that nuance, the rest of these we thought were largely the same, whether it's a new or it's existing, they should all have the same financial stability and that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, and then just for clarity though, along those lines, if you are proposing, for example, as an enhanced pilot, some service expansion, with respect to the fiscal stability portion of it, if that service expansion was going to go away at the end of the pilot, then they would get a lower score in the fiscal stability section as well.
Exactly.
Because
Yes.
you'd expect the whole thing to continue, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great, thanks. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Sharon Cooney.
Yeah, and I would assume that what you're going to look at, so for instance, if you're going to apply the performance metrics to both, you're going to have the experts that you bring on kind of reality check
Yes.
what the expectations of the new service are. And then that would be where you would have that. So if it's $60 per passenger trip and they're expecting 10,000 trips, they can reality check whether that's.
Absolutely. Yes, that's where those evaluators is critical. It needs to be folks that have deployed a service and know what it looks like to operate it.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve staff recommendation and. send it on to the
approved.
board. Yeah,
So moved.
Mayor Sanchez moves.
I second it.
Councilmember Fleming seconds. I will call for the vote. Not seeing the voting screen yet. We good? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Awesome. With that, we've reached the end of the irregular agenda. I will note that our next normal time for Transportation Committee got clobbered by the board retreat. So we are going to be pushed out a week and pushed out 4 hours. So our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, March 27th at 1 p.m. So make sure your calendars are updated for 1 p.m. as opposed to the 9 a.m. start time. With that, everybody have a great weekend. We're adjourned.